Chad Dukes versus the World, broadcasting live from Washington Redskins training camp in Richmond, Virginia. Thank you to Craig Hoffman for coming on the program. He was driven by the summer sales event. Lindsay Ford, lindsayford.com, 0% financing up to 130% of the KBB. 4 trades and no payments till autumn. You'll love it at Lindsay, lindsayford.com. Les Carpenter here in the flesh from the Washington Redskins. Scoop Carpenter, they call him around these parts, breaking all kinds of news. Good to see you finally in person, bud. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Awesome. It's hot. It has been hot. People have mentioned that before.
You ready to go home?
Well, I've only been here 2 days. I mean, I feel like I'm cheating the system. Everybody else has a residency here, but it's been cool. Like talking to a lot of the guys that have on the show so many times, live and in person. It's been a hoot, and we've had some good guests. And the weather yesterday was terrifying. Yeah, but other than that, looking forward finally to seeing them play somebody else on Thursday. And we were just talking. I said, yeah, I don't need to see Colt McCoy against the Browns. You're like, no, playing your own team. Give me something to write about. I guess it's like a different
Colt
perspective.
McCoy returning to the banks of the Lake Erie. I mean,
Yeah.
How great would it be? I mean, he was the future there once,
So many
along with
guys.
about 50 other futures there once.
Yeah, that's why it's so weird just to see the expectations for them this year. And I don't know. I guess if you're 17 or 18, you don't think about it. But I'm like, of course the Steelers are going to win the division. Like, of course they're going to go out there and do it this year. It's the Browns. It'll be wild if that's no longer the case and that paradigm has shifted.
Yeah, it will be, and I was kind of hopeful there. Jay likes to do this joint practice, and usually like to try to do it with a team in the that they play in the preseason, and you obviously want to do it early in the preseason, not later. And this week just lined up as, this would be so perfect if they spent 3 days out in Bray, Ohio, with the Josh Norman going up against OBJ every day, and just all the storylines of the Browns. It would have been a lot of fun. So,
but you seem to you kind of agree with what the sentiment. He hasn't announced anything yet, but I don't think we're going to see Colt McCoy on Thursday.
I would assume we're not going to see Colt. You want to see Dwayne Haskins. You want to get that look right away, and you want to see too what Case Keenum does in game action because you don't know yet. I mean, Colt he's proven he knows what he can do with the offense, but you don't know about the other two guys, and I think you'd like to see them as much as you can.
It's so funny. The Redskins having a first-round quarterback, and I wonder how different the whole narrative would have been and what you and I would have been discussing. And everybody, if the Trent Williams situation isn't what it was, and, you broke a lot of that news. And it's funny to me because it's such a big story. It's the story, and I feel like it's been underreported on this entire time because it's such just a swinging matzo ball out in front of all of us that, their best player doesn't trust them and doesn't want to play football for them.
Yeah, you have that. I also think, because I've been wondering this a little bit, think back to the RG3 stuff.
Sure.
How big was that? I mean, first-round quarterback here in any camp usually is a big deal, and it's almost as if Dwayne Haskins has been an afterthought. And I feel like some of that is because you have these other two veteran guys. He clearly has a little bit of a learning curve, and they're taking him slowly. Most of his, when they do the walkthroughs, he's always with the third team. They have 2 separate fields. They have the first 2 teams. They have the other 2 teams. He's always on the other field. He doesn't take all the same reps, it feels like, that those other 2 guys do with the top guys. And so you don't feel that same buzz about that star rookie quarterback who's going to be the future that you would when you say you had RG3 or, other guys in other camps, other places. It's very, very muted, and I have to constantly remind myself, Dwayne Haskins is here.
Do you think that's I've heard nothing about how hyper confident he is and competitive and blah, blah, blah. Do you think it's good for a guy like that to have that situation where somehow he's flying a little bit under the radar on this rookie season?
Absolutely. I mean, I remember, this is a guy who didn't have 4 years as a starter in college or 3 years as a starter in college. I mean, he had some time at Ohio State. He played some big games, all that stuff, but I mean, why rush it? I mean, why? In the old days, you didn't rush it. For Cam Newton, you didn't rush it. Andy Dalton, that 1 year, those 2 guys came in and started right away. Before that, you didn't do this. And Peyton Manning was the one exception. And so now it's this constant. You got to find out about your rookie quarterback right away. No, you don't. And let him grow if you can.
Cam Newton, what do you think that conversation was like with that guy who's been as big as he's been for as long as I remember? You say, well, maybe he's not ready and we should sit him. Just looking at him, that must have been a very difficult, easy conversation to have.
It was, but remember, that was after the lockout. So
Yeah.
there was absolutely no time. And Jay did the same thing in Cincinnati as the offensive coordinator with Andy Dalton. I mean, those 2 guys, those 2 teams, they went with very, very limited time where you weren't able to get playbooks and all those things to guys and then threw them out there on the field right away. And after that, it almost seems like everyone thinks you have to start the guy. I guess Mark Sanchez did too with the Jets those couple of years, but why do it? Why do it if you don't have to?
Yeah.
Why do it if you don't have your left tackle?
I agree. Well, I've said this a couple times. I said I would go to Dwayne Haskins right now and say, hey, if Trent doesn't show up, you're not playing this year. So just realize that, and we're not going to get you out there until we address the situation in a way we know that we can give you the best shot at success. I've been shot down by a couple of people for that notion, but I understand the reps are important, but I don't know. I would not feel comfortable unless Donald Penn gets out there and he's playing like he's 31 years old again. I don't want him a part of that turnstile just because of the Patrick Ramseys and the quarterbacks that we've seen come and go from here to take that beating and really just never recover from it.
Well, I completely agree with that line of thinking if you have the guys who can play out there, and you presumably do with McCoy and Keenum. But, again, it's the NFL, it's the Redskins, it's a lot of things here, and that doesn't always necessarily – it's not always the way it's going to play out.
Sure. So then the rest of this, Jay was here, and you've seen him. He's light and he's cool and he's Jay Gruden. This is a weird situation to be in where you bring in a quarterback. The Kirk Cousins thing was bizarre. Then bringing in Alex Smith is somewhat bizarre. And then the leg break is bizarre. And then you draft a quarterback in the first round and all the reports say it's the ownership. And also you've got Colt and then you bring in another veteran. Also, you got to make the playoffs so you're going to keep your job. But also we're developing these other young. I know it's a difficult job and that's why there's so few of them. They get paid so much money. But good Lord, does he have a lot of different directions he's trying to pull the rope in. I just don't know what type of a job that's going to be for him this year.
Yeah, I mean, and he seems wired for that. I mean, he definitely, you've seen it here, you've seen it on your show, you've seen it for the last few years. Yeah. He is not flappable. He is the same Jay Gruden no matter what, and that probably has played to his advantage here because certainly the stuff last year was you get into the November and December, and I mean, every day my phone buzzed, and I kept, what's it now? What's happening today? I mean, imagine what it was for him.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, and I think that's how he's held together teams. These 7-9s probably wouldn't have been 7-9s. They probably would have been a lot worse if it was a different coach. But, yeah, there's a lot on the plate. I still think that 3-quarterback battle, especially when one of the quarterbacks is a rookie and two of the others are established veterans, to me is I know those things have happened elsewhere. I just can't off the top of my head think of one right now.
No.
I mean, maybe a little bit the Russell Wilson one that he won in Seattle. But not to this level, not with a wide open thing in this late in camp. All of that plus the Trent Williams thing, and yeah, I think this would have eaten up a lot of coaches.
Matt Flynn, Russell Wilson beating out Matt Flynn. Yeah, back then when they gave him all that cash, it seems like a no-brainer now, but I just remember how weird that was. Would it be weird if it was Haskins week 1 after what you've seen so far?
I think a little bit.
Yeah, me too.
A little bit. But, he looked good today for whatever that was worth. It was a little lighter, but I thought he threw the ball really well. I thought he looked as good as I've seen him look. Who knows? You kind of that's why you play these preseason games. I guess that's why you play them. But, I mean, you go out there, and if he lights it up in Cleveland and he lights it up against Cincinnati, maybe it's a different story. But right now, yeah, I would say why. You don't have to rush it. You got 2 other guys. You've got some other stuff out there. You can yeah. Yeah.
I've been talking to you guys that have been watching this team and covering this team for weeks, and what I have figured out is that this is not a playoff team. And I have made the statement on my show several times that if Jay Gruden gets this team with whatever the conglomerate is at quarterback to 8-8, it might be his best job as a head coach. And then we are to believe he will be fired as soon as that takes place. I don't know how you do that. I know they love Kevin O'Connell. I've been told by a couple people, they're going to fire him, and then Callahan comes in, and then they go ahead, and it's going to be O'Connell moving forward. They love him. It's like, okay, maybe that works. I don't know. But if he's able to – that team last year was so devastated. It was so rudderless and so awful. And they were 7-9, and they won a game in Tampa, and you're like, you're still in the playoff race. He does such a good job of dealing with the Ashburn garbage, and then when chaos happens, he's just not going to fall apart. If this is a 500 team that we're watching right now, I think you got to keep him around.
Presumably, yeah. I mean, 500. Who knows? Maybe 500 even gets you in the playoff race. You don't know. I mean, there's so many other intangibles. I think it's how you finish. It's how guys develop. I mean, a reason you always fire a coach is if you think the team's quitting. I mean, his teams have never quit on Jay. And I'm not sure the locker room right now is set for that to happen. That's a very, especially in a defensive side, that's a very solid group.
Yeah.
And it is a good defense, and that's the other intangible here that we haven't. Once we get into games, we'll see what happens. But that's a pretty aggressive defense. I mean, maybe the offense doesn't look so good because the defense is that good. I don't know. But that defense could do something here. I mean, maybe that keeps this team a little competitive. There's so many intangibles to start thinking now. I don't. I think it's too soon to say. This is dead coach walking. I don't think that you can look at that right now.
I don't like to play the woulda, shoulda, coulda game too. Though we're also looking at a division where it is very possible that Ezekiel Elliott holds out and Carson Wentz gets injured. And if both of those things happen, then JD barred the door. The whole thing is just blown open.
Yeah, but again, you don't know. I mean, the injuries haven't hit here.
That's true.
And they will because they have
it's
before.
Washington D.C.
Well, it has before. You just have to realize that's probably going to happen again. I mean,
Yeah.
you have a lot of guys that's happened to, and I don't think you can sit here right now and say they're going to go through the season injury free.
It is Les Carpenter for the Washington Post. You can find him there, WashingtonPost.com, at Les Carpenter. On Twitter, appreciate him hanging out with us here in Richmond at training camp. Great to see you in person, my friend.
Yeah, same
really
here.
Appreciate the time. Always appreciate the content.